from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to an episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today I'm very pleased joining me, Greg Banks. Greg, thank you very much for being here with me today on the show. I appreciate the time. The way I love to do it is I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves, give me a little bit more about, your background, your journey, what you're currently up to. Just a kind of teaser for the audience. We're going to talk a lot about education today and everything related to education from technology perspective. But again, I don't like to take from my guests a lot. So I'm going to pass it to you, Greg. The floor is yours.
Fantastic. And Mehmet, thanks so much for having me on today. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. So I'll work kind of up to today and kind of what might be relevant for your audience. I've been a teacher and a school administrator for 20 years. I got into education because I wanted to create schools that could serve city kids. I live in the Boston, Massachusetts area of the United States, and started out as a chemistry teacher. I did work in the chemistry field for a while, but I went into teaching, became an administrator, ended up getting a PhD in chemistry with a focus on chemistry education. And so have also done some research on chemistry teaching. I've also developed professional development for high school and college teachers in the area of science teaching. So really everything around how do you help kids learn? I've focused mostly in the high school level, but I've also worked with some middle school and some college students as well. And how I got onto this topic is that there have been technology infusions into K-12 education. And in the United States, we tend to group, let's say, age 5 to age 18 into this basket called K-12. So that's what I'm referring to. So there's been tech kind of infused into K-12 education throughout my career. It started out with these little devices called clickers that were like TV remote controls. And it went on to things like smart boards and laptops and MOOCs, massive online open courses, and of course the internet. And so I've seen these things come and I've heard the promise, and I've also seen the promise not be delivered. And so when I was working on a research project with it's a company called Edo Learning, they develop AI related products for education. And we were studying kind of implementation of one of their products. And I was talking with one of their engineers, brilliant guy. And we were talking about how some aspect of the classroom worked. And I was explaining kind of the mechanics of how it worked. And it was a complete surprise to him. And it was something that was, if I had been talking to any of my teacher colleagues, it would have been very clear. It would have been something that they all knew. Uh, and that's where it struck me that if you're out of the education field, there are many things that you may not be aware of. And this is true of most fields. I'm sure in every field, there are things that people pick up by experience over time that people outside the field don't know. And the challenge of developers, of coders and developers, people building products for education, is that if they are building products for something that is in a field that they don't have direct knowledge of, they have to kind of jump in with some kind of knowledge to build the product, which they may not have. And so that led me to write a book about kind of everything that they would need to know, that developers would need to know in order to be developing AI products for the classroom. So that's kind of how I made the jump from being in education to talking more about AI.
Cool. And again, thank you for being here with me today, Greg. I appreciate the time. Now, you took the first question from me, about like what was the pivotal moment that made you do the shift, which is fantastic. Now, um, you also like talked about the book. So you touched base a little bit, but I believe there are like more gaps which we are discovering by the day between mainly, of course, in the tech, but mainly AI and education. Let me frame the question this way. Do you think that this fast development of AI that we've seen in the past 2, 3 years uncovered these, I would say, shortcomings that we have in education system today in a fast way that even sometimes, like me as a person, very much, believing in education. I remember my days in school, but I'm watching now my daughter going to her high school, and they figure out like, really, like, this is like, there's a complete, nonsense over here. From your perspective as an educator and someone in tech, how this fast development also was, mainly a contributor to cover these outcomings or shortcomings?
It's a great question. And if I'm understanding you, it sounds like what you're noticing is that what teenagers, let's say, are aware of and what they're able to do themselves using AI is so advanced compared to what their teachers in school are still asking them to do.
Right,
And it makes you wonder, you as a parent, it makes you wonder, why are schools still having them teach things that are down here that AI can do and produce results that are up here? Like, does it make sense to have them still learning those same things? Is that your
right.
question?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a complicated question. So, um, I think there's two parts to that question. Um, I think there is, how do we change the outcomes, the targets that our school systems have are directing our kids towards, and that's a big question. Um, and then there's also the question around, um, how is AI as a tool best used in school? And though they sound kind of like the same question, they're actually different. So one is what should students learn, and the other is kind of how should students learn.
Right,
And if I can speak that the how part first, and then we'll get to the what. Um, so what I've seen with the introduction of technology is that very often tech will come in and it will be engaging and interesting, but it won't really deliver on its promise, and it will end up interfering with the way that students and teachers learn. And one thing to keep in mind is that kids are not just short adults. Like, kids have different needs. They have developmental needs that are very different from adults. And what might work for an adult might be disastrous for kids. So recently we had the COVID-19 shutdowns for school. I was actually teaching at the time, and we would try to teach on Zoom, and it was a disaster. So prior to this, people were saying, hey, we have these massive online open courses. We can have students go to school from the comfort of their home. They can learn from the rock stars in every field. This will be great. It's really going to change education. Well, the actual result was that kids hated it, and they didn't want to learn on a Zoom. They didn't want to watch a teacher. Uh, and there was massive learning loss, huge social emotional challenges. A few kids liked it, but the vast majority of them did very poorly on it. Adults do great with it, kids not so much. So, in terms of how we use AI, I think it's really important that how the tools are introduced is done with an understanding of what is it that kids are getting in a positive sense? What are the kids getting from school? Because if all kids need is information, they don't need to go to school. Information's everywhere. But we know that information is not enough because there's that saying: if information were all it took, we'd all have six-pack abs and be billionaires. Um, but you need more than just information. So we can talk about that if that's a topic of interest. So that's kind of the how. In terms of the what, the targeting, that's a trickier question because you have a number of stakeholders. You have parents, you have teachers, you have government officials, and it's really the government officials in the United States. It's the states that set the targets for education, and the teachers just carry out those targets. So,
Mm-hmm.
are we going to say, okay, students no longer need to learn geometry, or they no longer need to learn to write a five-paragraph essay? Maybe that's the case. Maybe we should change that. Um, but that's going to take some time. Um, and there may be an argument to be made that the kids that are in the classroom right now are important, and we need to make some decisions faster. But whether we should change the target toward which students are learning is a great question, and honestly, nobody knows the answer. And I could tell you a bit of how AI is being used in school right now.
Yeah, sure.
So
Um,
when
but
when AI
before
first,
this, but before that, Greg, yeah, I want to listen to this, but I want you also to highlight about okay, how is AI used is very important. But if you remember, there was this debate when AI, I mean, ChatGPT AI was there before. Like, should we allow it in schools? We don't allow it in schools. So if you can also touch base on that part also as well.
that's a great starting point, right? So when ChatGPT first arose, um, the response of schools was prohibitive. So they tried to
Yes,
prohibit it. And I say tried because there's no way for schools to know, for teachers to know when a student uses uh, a chatbot to do their work. There were supposedly tools that were going to come out that could detect it, but they didn't work. And there really is no way to know. And so teachers and schools, and I wrestled with this as an administrator, how do we enforce academic integrity if we're asking students to produce something outside of school and they turn it in? How do you know that they did the work? And the answer is you don't, not anymore. And so more and more we're seeing that schools are, if they want to assess what students actually know and can do, that they are having those students produce that work under testing conditions in school. Um, that's a real nuts and bolts kind of response to that. So prohibiting ChatGPT is one aspect. There's starting to be a sense of kind of the next stage, which is assimilative. So assimilating AI in lessons. Um, but this is really, and I've heard this come up in other conversations on your podcast, this is kind of like strapping on AI into what you're already doing. Um,
right.
and that would be so. I'm remembering a coding class. It was a Python class where students would check their code. If it wasn't working, they would check their code using ChatGPT, and that's very effective because there's only one teacher and you have a number of students. But if you can drop your code in and have an LLM check it, you get much faster results. It's super effective. You could do that in English class with an essay. Please give me feedback on my essay. So it's being used that way as kind of like a strap-on, an additional tool. But there's only so many places where it fits in neatly that way. And so where I think the biggest opportunity is to integrate it in school, is to integrate it in a behind-the-scenes way. And not that there aren't direct lessons that teachers could develop using AI tools, um, but that's going to take some time. What I mean by integrative is having AI applications helping the teacher do things that the teacher can't currently do. Analyzing student work, monitoring student conversations, and providing the teacher feedback, or even offering the students extra guidance while the students are working on a challenge. And there are various ways that it could do that. So integrating AI more in what's going on in the classroom.
You talked about the role of the teachers, right? And I know, like, you wrote about this, and you you try to unlock the code, or like crack the code over here. So, what do you think? Let me ask you this way. So, from product's perspective, if I'm developing an EdTech AI powered product today, why it's important also to put the teachers in mind? Because usually what I see people doing is they focus on the students, which is okay,
Mhm.
but I think they don't focus on the teacher, which is the person who is responsible of delivering this knowledge. And how we can prepare the teachers now. Probably the new generation of teachers will be, almost like tech savvy, let's put it this way. But still, maybe if they have, I don't know, like if someone studied English literature, just, I'm
Mhm.
making this up, how much do you think they would be familiar of using this AI tools? What should we do with them before using AI tools in the classroom?
Yeah, I mean that's a fair question. And AI is all over the news, and people are seeing how it has already changed the employment landscape and the career landscape. And I think teachers, as with many professionals, are aware that they need to learn to use this if they're going to have a long career. And I do think that, I should say, I don't think that there's going to be a major reduction in force of teachers. I think teachers will still be necessary. I think, especially with kids, kids want to learn in a classroom with other kids and with teachers. I think that's not going away. So the key is, how do you get teachers up to speed in using this technology? And I think right now there's an openness to it and there's an eagerness for it. I think teachers don't want to be left behind.
Mm-hmm.
They want to stay marketable. And that's also why it's so important to get it right, to build these products with an understanding of the classroom. Because if products come in and they don't work, if it looks like online school again, or if it looks like clickers, or if it looks like laptops, at a point where honestly now in the classroom, we're seeing phones removed, we're seeing laptops removed because there's too much of a distraction. So if AI is brought in a way where it's like, this is just another distraction, um, then I think there's going to be some resistance developing. But at this point, for the most part, I think there is a lot of interest, and it's a really opportune moment to get it right, and to do some great new development.
Greg, it's interesting you mentioned about the devices in school. I live in Dubai, and I was listening on, I was moving in the city. So on the radio that I usually listen to, they were discussing this topic, and like they were mentioning, like, yeah, like the like government entity responsible for schools, they want their help, actually, the parents and also some school seniors, to put some rules regarding use of phones, laptops, tablets, whatever that is. And this is immediately brought this to me. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, maybe I'm a little bit extreme, I don't know. I don't like anything, to ban people from doing anything, including children. Okay, maybe less than 12 years old, I can understand this, but I mean, like, once they, because come on, like, at this generation, they are so smart. But the thing that immediately came to my mind is that now every single AI company, if we really look at what they are trying to do, they're gonna embed AI in everything.
Mhm.
We're talking about, already we have some, I would say, MVPs around it. So we have the glasses where you can have like some interaction. They are talking about OpenAI coming up with a device that I don't know where it's gonna be. Is it a ring? Is it a glass? I'm not sure. But I think kids will find their way still to get this in. Don't you think that as educators, as people who are responsible for education of teenagers, we need to find a better way than telling them, no, you can't bring your phone? I'm not sure what the alternative would be, because my theory says, like, teenagers, they like to break the rules, right? And they're gonna find their ways. uh, And this is kind of,
Yep.
like for me, and I know like in some places like Europe, is what they were mentioning on the show, that they went back from using, laptops and tablets in education back to pen and paper, which is fine. But still, restriction too much, I see it as little bit risky because everything around us is changing very fast. And then my theory, and I want to hear your opinion as someone who worked in this for a long time, Greg. The problem with us, my generation, for example, we're not allowed to use calculators. And guess what? When we went out, there was no harm of using a calculator. My intelligence didn't decrease with time because I'm using calculator in my job day to day, right?
Hmm.
So what my concern is, if we push back on using technology at that age, they're gonna rebel on us later on, and why you did all these restrictions on us. I know maybe it's kind of an off-topic thing, but because you just mentioned it, what's your say on that?
I mean, that's a great point. And I really love that you're talking about, individual freedom in general, not just of kids, but of people. I think that's always important to keep in mind. I think it's easy when you're talking about how do you solve a problem to come up with something that's heavy-handed that tries to force people to do things they don't want to do. And we should always be cautious around that. So I appreciate and respect that you brought that up. Um, there's a book came out in 2024 in the United States by Jonathan Haidt called The Anxious Generation. I don't know if you've ever read that or heard of it,
I
but
heard of it.
I would encourage your listeners to read it or at least read what's been written about it. Essentially, what it has found and the interpretations, the findings have stood up to scrutiny. Uh, is that after the introduction of the front-facing camera on the smartphone, so the selfie camera, anxiety and depression went up dramatically in both boys and girls, more significantly in girls, and um, that there's been a number of negative emotional and social outcomes as a result of of kids having smartphones. Um, Now, no one is saying kids shouldn't have phones. Period. End of sentence. If you add up the total number of hours that kids are in school, in classes, let's say, I mean, it comes out to be about, I don't know, 6 hours, maybe 8 hours at the most. So no one is saying that kids should be banned from having cell phones 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but for a period of 6 to 8 hours a day for the purpose of um, school, uh, there's an argument to be made, and that is that, remember, kids are not just short adults; they're developing, and
Mm-hmm.
evolution or whatever has designed us so that at that point in our development, and when we're um, you know growing up through those preteen and teen years, that we learn to relate to other people by face to face interaction, not face to screen to face interaction, but face to
Mm-hmm.
face interaction, embodied interaction, interaction where we're standing next to each other, where we're talking to each other, where we're talking in a group. And what has been observed, and this is not just theoretical, this is what's been observed when those phones are around, is that kids will interact with the phone and not with each other. And so that's retarding that growth. And so while it can seem like a kindness to let kids have what they want, just as we tell kids to brush their teeth whether they want to or not. We tell them to eat a healthy dinner whether they want to or not. There are just some things we do as parents because we have knowledge of what's coming down the road. And one of the things that kids need to do, especially today, is to be able to relate to other people. It's your charisma, Mehmet, as a host that is allowing you to connect to other people. It's not I know you have technical skill as well, but it's your interpersonal skill and that adeptness you have at relating to other people that is allowing you to kind of distinguish yourself in this field. And so, even more as AI is going to become a tool that everybody uses, what's going to distinguish people is their uniqueness as humans. And in order to develop that, kids need to have that time where they don't have devices. They're going to be surrounded by devices every other moment of the day. And so carving out a 6 to 8 hour period, 5 days a week, it's not a lot of time. And it will allow them to develop that side of themselves. And it will also allow whatever's happening in the classroom we're assuming it's designed by a skillful teacher, whatever else is happening in the classroom, to happen without the distraction. And if I could just say one more thing,
True.
I was in the classroom in 2008, before that, but in 2008, when phones first started coming in, and we had this conversation of like, can we tell them to put their phones away? Can we tell them to not bring them? And there was a big question of like, well, this is their private property. I was in a public school. It's especially relevant.
Mm.
Um, and so for, the last 10, 12 years, we have said, okay, we're going to let kids have their phones and we're just going to try to minimize it. Like we've tried it and the results haven't been good. And if you care about kids and you care about student learning and you care about their growth and you see that what you're doing isn't working, and it's having negative results, then you do something different. And so we're trying something different.
Absolutely. And again, this is my own 2 cents because, by the way, you mentioned something about what happened during the pandemic, right? So when kids were forced to go to Zoom, this is where the human nature, in my opinion, which is in all of us, including our children, so they were pushing back because they wanted this human interaction and one-to-one interaction. And I was watching, once the things started to open up, they can meet up again by themselves. They were putting their phones, their tablets, whatever aside, and talking to each others. And I think this is a human nature. Yes, we are, even us adults, we are like very addicted to our phones, and we hear like all these coaches and mentors that say, hey, like at least you need like to get some time off your screen and to have a better concentration. I think the same applies for them. But the way I love to do it is to get it in an educational way rather than say, hey, no, it's not allowed to bring your phone with you, or like you have to put it somewhere and then you can pick it up. So the thing is, I'm more leaning towards educating them why they have to put aside rather than just telling them no, you can't do it, because this is will create kind of a rebelling feeling within them. This is what I watch on other kids.
Mm-hmm.
um just my own 2 cents on this, but anyway,
Yeah.
now back to what you were discussing at the beginning, Greg. So you did pilots like with Edo Learning and Einstein Project. What did you learn about AI's real world impact, especially in the high school setting, or what you call it in the States K-12 settings? Any surprising wins or failures that you have noticed from these experiments?
Well, the pilot study we were doing was actually what I would say even a fourth kind of iteration of using AI, and that's using AI to train teachers, or as a tool for teachers to use. And I think you were kind of raising this question earlier. Um, so the tool was, I guess it would be called in the field a small language model, because it was really just built around the what's called the teacher's guide for a particular new science curriculum. So excuse me, um, the teachers in the study were going to a week-long training on how to use this new science curriculum, and the tool was something that they could um, ask natural language questions of in terms of how to use the teacher guide, let's say. Um, so the study isn't out yet, but what the results seem to be saying is that a number of findings. One is that the more you know, the better you're able to use the tool. So that may speak to the importance of prompt generation, which um, you talk about something that should maybe change about education, and I think students and teachers could probably use some training right away on prompt generation. So I would put that down. And how it came out in this study was that the teachers that had some experience in the curriculum, let's say less than a year, were able to ask better questions and get better information from the tool. The, the teachers who were brand new, who didn't have any background knowledge about the tool or about the curriculum or what was in it, their questions were much more surface level. It was really much more like, where do I find the handouts for tomorrow's lesson? And that's understandable for a number of reasons. They were focused on very basic implementation. They didn't have a sense of where the curriculum was going. Um, but it does have implications if we're talking about training teachers, in that there's no substitute for experience. If you have a teacher who has experience, who knows what it is, who knows a bit of the landscape, maybe not well defined, but has a sense of what's out there, they're able to ask much better questions. They're able to get much better information.
Right. Now, I'm gonna ask you about the market. At least I know you can share maybe probably some statistics or some facts from the US. So the K-12 market, right? So how attractive is it currently? Mainly for, of course, AI-powered innovation. But what I want you to highlight to us, Greg, is what do you think we have plenty of, and founders should leave that alone, should not like waste their time, or developers also like we have plenty of products maybe, and what do you think are the areas that still have a lot of improvement, and they should try to come up with new products, new services maybe, and try to find this product market fit in that space.
Yeah, that's a great question. I believe the global tech market is 200 billion at the moment. It's projected to be 700 billion by 2033. And I think what's helpful for developers to know is, if we're talking about, say, the government education systems, I'll speak to the United States because that's what I'm
Sure.
familiar with. Um, it's really all about taking problems off of someone's plate. Um, so at the state level, kind of at the top of our system, um, the people who are in charge, they don't generally have tech backgrounds, and they're far removed from the classroom, and they want they're going to want someone who can come in and say that they are, um, taking care of it, that they are taking care of, um, AI education for students, that are able to integrate and train their teachers, kind of the whole package. Um, Zooming now down to the teachers, important thing to know about teachers is that they feel incredibly pressed for time. There's always so much to pay attention to when they're in the classroom with all of the students, and there's always more to do than there is time to do it. And so whatever is developed, ideally should take things off their plate, off teachers' plates, and give them information that they don't currently have, or that they don't have the time to get. So I mentioned earlier, reviewing student work, and this is something that I believe can already be done, but I'm going to talk about an integration. So uh, at the end of many classes, it's a good practice for teachers to give students a question or two on what the students were supposed to learn that day, as a check for understanding. So let's say we're in a paper and pencil situation. Teacher gives a piece of paper to every student. Students write down an answer to the question, and they hand it back in. Um, Ordinarily, the teacher will maybe glance through them if they have time. But if this is a more, say, 3 or 4 question response, they may not have time to go through it. If it's a longer written answer by the student, they may not have time to really break it down. But scanning these into some kind of system that can process them, um, and give the teacher an output of, here's the percentage of students that understood this idea, here's the percentage of students who understood that idea. Um, that would be very helpful. So that's kind of the first layer. The Where you start to get helpful, and where you really start to leverage an understanding of the classroom, is, okay, connect this now to everything else. So you have this understanding of what students learned in this classroom. How does that connect to the teacher's year-long lesson plan? So the teacher will have certain learning goals for each day for the whole year. How does this interact with what the teacher knows about each student's learning plan? So some students have a specific learning plan that documents challenges that they may have. Um, how does that particular student's response interact with their learning plan? That's another thing to plug into. How does that response, how do those responses plug into what the teacher is teaching the next day? let's say the teacher has a lesson where they're going to be giving a particular handout, again, paper and pencil, to give a handout um, to the students. Um, and an LLM can make a unique handout for each student that builds on what was learned or not learned the prior day. So it's really in those integrations. So I think to put that all together, I think having a hub where there's information in, where this hub knows where the teacher's going in terms of learning goals overall for the year. The hub has access to what the teacher is using for learning materials and has access to and permission to make modifications based on the student's prior learning, based on kind of what they're demonstrating today. What that's going to do is that's going to make really smart choices for each individual student without the teacher having to spend all of those hours doing it individually. And the teacher has the products of that and can work individually with the student. The teacher has the understanding of the student, the teacher has the understanding of the content, and the teacher can work with the student or with groups of students or with the whole class of students as it's appropriate to leverage those materials. It gives the teacher superpowers.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned and touched on something which it's a question we repeated maybe on the show many times about the future of education. Like, will AI replace the teacher? Will not replace the teacher? So I believe, this personalization and what AI allows the teachers to do, like to give them like the super personalized feedbacks about their work. I was reading, it's a famous book. It's been since 2018, I believe, AI Superpowers. Um, so by Dr. Kai Fuli. Um,
I'm going to read it. I haven't read it. Thank you.
yeah, so it doesn't discuss mainly education, but like, he discusses the future of humanity, in a post AI world, and of course, people who are afraid of losing jobs, and what humanity would look like, in a super intelligent era of machines that can do almost everything for us. And the thing that he brought, which I agree with, it's about how AI can give the teachers this ability to really give what we missed, our generations and the generations before us missed, which is the super personalization. So they put us all, in the same room, assuming that all of us we have the same ability to grasp new information, and then they give us the same exams, assuming that all of us we can take the same stress, we can take the same amount of time to solve things. And unfortunately, also, he didn't mention, but this is my thing also, society also put this taboo, like if you're not fast enough to finish on time, you're bad, right? So here where I'm seeing the AI changing things for the positive, and this is where I believe, um, the human element will stay. So what do you think other aspects would never be outsourced to a machine, Greg?
I mean, first of all, I just want to say I think the way you just characterized it is the best that I've ever heard it. I think that's a really great way to express what I think AI has to offer and what the future of the classroom can look like. So thank you for characterizing it that way. I think you nailed it. Um, so the main reason why I wrote the book, um, and what I hope people take away from it is that the you can think of the classroom as let's say we have a student at the top and we have a teacher as the base of a support, almost like it's a building. And there are three columns that are supporting this building with the students like the roof. The main central column, the biggest column, is the interpersonal relationship. The personal exchange is what I call it between the student and the teacher. And that is really just on the human level, uh, with the student having a sense of what the teacher thinks of them as a learner, as a person, as a member of the community. Um, and the other two pillars, one is the curriculum, which is what the learning is, and that's what most people think of as the job of the classroom, and it is the main job of the classroom, but it is just one of the three pillars. That's one. We have the personal exchange in the middle, And then the third one is the classroom exchange. Um, in most cases, we have students learning in groups, as you said. And also, what's going on is that student is exchanging ideas and information with all of the other students in class. They're learning how to work with other students. They're learning how to collaborate. They're learning how to um, approach a student if they have a question, or if they see that student has a question and they want to offer help. They are sharing ideas and triangulating with the teacher to get a sense of, like, well, what is the right answer in this case? So there's a lot of complex interpersonal structures being built. There's a lot of learning being built. There's a great quote by Vygotsky that I'm going to paraphrase. It's learning occurs first on the social plane before it's internalized. And what that refers to is that in a classroom setting, there are ideas that come out in discussion from the teacher, from the students, in the student's own mind, maybe even from a textbook. There are ideas that come out and that are bounced around in the classroom. And at some point in a good classroom, there will be a consensus about what the valuable knowledge is about that topic. And once the valuable knowledge about that topic has been identified, that's when students tend to take it in and say, okay, this is something worth learning. And that's how humans have learned for a long time. It's not just the classroom thing. So to get to your question, it's that process that can't be interfered with. It can't be interfered with in a positive way. There are so many things AI can do to help it and to work alongside it without interrupting it, but it's respecting and understanding that process, it's just how we're designed. It's how humans learn. So understanding that and building around it and building to support it is, I think, the most important thing.
Right. Now, as you've seen, and in your introduction, you mentioned about the clickers and how things, changed in almost 20 years time. Are you optimistic about what's coming, or are there some aspects that make you, I would not say pessimistic, but I would say you look at them with caution?
And then, is this about the classroom or is this about AI and
Education,
society?
education, and classroom. Let's put it this
Mhm.
way, and of course, from technology perspective.
Um, I, in terms of the classroom, no, I'm actually very optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
I think for a number of reasons. I think it is going to radically change what is taught in school. Um, I think in, let's say, 20 years, hopefully sooner, but in 20 years, I think kind of what you brought up in the very beginning, what students are learning is going to be very different than what it is today. Um, I mean, we may even have different topics, different classes rather than a science class and an English class, et cetera. It may be very different. Um, I also think that the occupations that are available to people are going to change, um, and I think occupations that have a human interacting with a human are going to be more common than human interacting with, let's say, a computer, because AI can do a lot of that. And so, what I think an upshot of that is there's going to be more interest in going into educations, and so I think the let's say the caliber of people that are going into education is going to increase, because it's going to be rightly seen as a promising career, and um, and so I think that teaching is going to get better, and that in turn is going to make the outcomes better. I think we're going to see a quantum leap in the outcomes in terms of what
Mm-hmm.
students are able to learn by the time they're 18, which is great, because I think that where we're going from here, we're going to need to really understand so much more about the world. We need to get a more solid cognitive understanding earlier in our development.
Great. Greg, if as we are coming almost to an end, if you want to leave, founders, especially in that space, in the ed tech for the K-12, with one advice, what that would be, and of course, where they can get in touch with you.
Um, so that one piece of advice is, don't try to put any tech between the teacher and the student. It's not helpful. Um, and by that I mean between the personal exchange between the student and the teacher. It's that trust between the teacher and the student that is the foundation of teaching and learning. And if there's not trust between teachers and students, then learning isn't going to happen. The whole process shuts down. So don't put anything in the way that can interrupt that. I don't know that there's anything that can be done to improve it. Um, uh, but try, but don't interrupt it. And in terms of getting in touch with me, I've got a Substack. It's also called Aligned. So you can find me there. That's a great way to interact around the material. I took a pause on it to write the book, but I'll return it to it another time or at some time. And that's a great way to connect.
Great. Again, I will make sure that I will put the link for the Substack in the show notes so people can, subscribe and read and maybe get in touch with you, Greg. I think we touched, a lot of important topics related to education, especially in high school or as it's called K-12 in the US. And, the effect of technology and the future of that education. So you brought very, very good, thoughts, I would say, both for educators and for people working on products for that sector specifically. So thank you very much, Greg, for being here with me today. And as I said, the links will be in the show notes. And this is how usually I end my episodes. This is for the audience. If you just discovered us by luck, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, please give me a favor. Subscribe, share it with your friends and colleagues. We're trying to make an impact. So as much as we can reach more people, the better it becomes. And if you are one of the people who keep coming again and again, thank you very much for your support, for all the messages you send me, for your loyalty also as well. You're doing great job for me because without you, I couldn't have the podcast ranking in the top 200 charts in multiple countries in the entrepreneurship category in Apple Podcast. And again, the big thank you goes to all my guests, including you, Greg, also as well, because you are part of this and I couldn't do anything without that, right? So again, as I say always, stay tuned for a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.